Subject Linguistics, course title Pragmatics and Discourse Analysis, Module 1, Deixis 1. Writers Rajneesh Arora and Spriha Agarwal. Presenter Rajneesh Arora. The words in a language carry some basic meaning which the users of that language understand. That is how a language becomes mutually intelligible to all its users, and they are able to arrive at meaning in language. However, the user's interpretation of some words depends both on their knowledge of the language and the context in which it is used. The context in this case involves their knowledge about the situational and background knowledge. The situational knowledge refers to the interlocutor's knowledge of who the speaker is, who the hearer is, the time of utterance, and the place of utterance, whereas the background knowledge refers to their knowledge about one another, that is, interpersonal knowledge, and about the world, cultural knowledge. In this module, we will look at a class of lexical items whose meanings depend upon evidences from the context of utterance in which they are used. Take, for example, the following piece of conversation between two persons, say A and B. 1. A. I suppose you learned French some time back, didn't you? 2. B. Well, yes, but I couldn't continue it after a couple of weeks. 3. A. Actually, the user manual for my new printer is written in French. I was wondering if you could help me with that. 4. B. I'll give it a try. I have only a smattering knowledge of French, though. The pronoun I has been used a number of times in these utterances. However, the meaning of I changes every time there is a change in the speaker of the utterance. That is, when A uses I, it refers to or points to A, and when B uses I, it refers to or points to B. Therefore, the addressee or the hearer present during the time of conversation should know who utters I in order to understand the meaning of I, that is, who the pronoun I refers to. Similarly, there are other lexical items such as pronouns you and we, adverbs of place here and there, demonstratives this and that, and adverbs of time then and now that require us to know the person who utters these, the place where they are uttered, and the time when they are uttered. Such lexical items which, in order to be understood, require information from the context are called deictics, and the phenomenon of their occurrence in language is called deixis. Derived from the Greek word for pointing, deixis causes the interlocutors to point towards entities in the immediate context of utterance for reference. The interlocutors are able to talk about and locate a referent by paying mutual attention to each other and by understanding the referential intentions of the speaker. This point will become clear as we explore in detail the phenomenon of deixis further. There has been ample study on how we understand and refer to persons, objects, and spaces around us. For example, Fillmore 1982 and 1997, Levinson 1983 and 2011, and Lyons 1977 and 1979. These explorations have developed the notion of pointing through language and have brought to our notice the various types of deictics present in language based on the contextual information they carry. For example, information about person, place, time, etc. In this module, we will try to develop our understanding of deictic terms through examples from day-to-day situations in life and see how the knowledge of context is indispensable for complete understanding of the meaning of these items. Besides, we will also learn to differentiate between their deictic and non-deictic usage of these words. Did you know deictics are among the most frequently spoken words in casual conversation? The phenomenon of deixis is exhibited in language through 5 types of deixis, namely person, time, place, discourse, and social deixis. However, before we begin to understand each of these in detail, let us first understand the concept of deictic center, which is pivotal to the understanding of deixis. The deictic system is organized around a central point, and it is with reference to this point that the referent of a deictic is perceived. The deictic center for person deixis consists of the speaker, I, me, we, etc. For time deixis consists of the time at which the speaker makes an utterance, now, today, etc. For place deixis, it consists of the spatial position of the speaker at the time of utterance, for example here. For discourse deixis, it is the point at which the speaker is in the production of the utterance, and for social deixis, it is the social status of the speaker in relation to that of the addressee. We now give you a diagrammatic representation of the person, place, and time deixis. While speaking, the speakers position themselves at a deictic center, comprising I, here, now, and make references to people, objects, places, and time from this point. Let us now look at each of these types of deixis one by one. Let's talk about person deixis. Person deixis encodes information about the participants in the conversation, namely the speakers and the hearers. It involves reference to the speaker and the addressee by various singular and plural forms of first person and second person subject, object, and possessive pronouns as shown in the table. As you can see, first person pronoun are I, me, and mine, singular, and we and us, plural. Second person pronouns are you, yours, and your, singular, and you, plural. In a conversation, person deixis helps us to understand the constant shift in deictic center from the speaker, that is first speaker, to the addressee, that is second speaker, and back to the speaker, that is first speaker. Let's look at the utterances 1 to 4 again. As we see, they involve the use of person deictic I to point alternately to two different persons by shifting deictic centers caused by a change in the speaker. Therefore, I refers to whoever the speaker is at a particular time, and in a particular place, and you refers to the addressee which the speaker talks to. You becomes I as the hearer changes his role and assumes the role of the speaker, for example in utterance 2 and 4. It is noteworthy that English language does not have separate lexical items to refer to the singular and plural forms of you. The hearer has to locate the reference of you by paying attention to the speaker's direction of gaze. For the first person Deixis, however, English has both singular and plural forms, that is I and we respectively. It is interesting to note how the plural form we is used at various instances in conversation to refer sometimes to the participants, such as utterances 5, 6, 8 and 9, sometimes to the non-participants such as utterance 7, and sometimes even to a single person such as utterances 8 and 9. 5. We want justice, where we points to two or more speakers present at the time of utterance, excluding the addressee and asking him or her for justice. 6. How should we solve this problem, where we points to the speaker as well as the addressees? 7. We had fish for dinner, where a single speaker uses we to point to all the members of a family even though they are not present at the time of utterance. This is an example given by O'Keefe, Clancy and Adolphs. 8. So we haven't got a ticket, where in English we is sometimes used to point not to the speaker but to the hearer, addressed in a sarcastic manner by the speaker. This is Grundy's example. And 9. Should we take the medicine now, where the speaker who uses we to refer to only the hearer while administering medicine to him does so in order to be polite by not impinging on his space. We may go to Brown and Levinson 1987 for various politeness strategies. The utterances 5 and 6 are cases of exclusive and inclusive we respectively. In some languages, such as Fijian, there are separate lexical items to denote exclusive and inclusive uses of we. In English, however, the speaker has to discern the reference of we in each of the cases from the situational context, that is, persons present at the time of utterance, the cultural context which makes utterances such as 8 and 9 intelligible among the English due to the interlocutor's knowledge of the politeness conventions in their culture, and from interpersonal knowledge between the interlocutors about a certain state of affairs, such as in 6. The use of third person pronouns such as he, she, it, him, her, they and them is usually anaphoric, that is non-deictic rather than deictic. This means that these words are used to make subsequent reference to those linguistic items which have previously been referred to by noun forms in the text. These words are not categorized as deictic because, unlike the reference of deictics, their reference are located within the text. Deictics do not point to reference of language items located within the text, that is, the items in the co-text. For example, look at the two utterances. Number 10. Rima is Rita's daughter. She won the Olympics gold medal for swimming. 11. She won the Olympics gold medal for swimming. She in 10 is anaphoric, as it refers back to Rima, a referent within the text. But she in 11 is deictic, as the speaker has to point through gestures to help the hearer locate the referent present in the physical surroundings and not in the text. As a matter of fact, it is the first and second persons and not the third person who is the direct participant in conversation. Therefore, the third person is not a direct but distant participant in conversation due to the fact that the third person is only talked about. So, interestingly, the third person pronoun is deliberately used in place of the second person pronoun for various purposes, such as to communicate distance and non-familiarity, as in 11, to communicate irony and humor, as in 12, to make accusations less direct, as in 13, or to state something as a general rule applicable to all persons when in fact it is directed to a single person, as in 14. You can go through UL 1996 for utterances 12, 13 and 14. Number 12. Would His Highness like some coffee? 13. Somebody didn't clean up after himself. 14. Each person has to clean up after him or herself. Interestingly, in Malagasy society, the speaker uses third person reference to refer to himself. For Sold 1990 quotes an instance where a teenage boy said, "Bossy's mother is a little sick," to refer to his own mother instead of saying "my mother." In Malagasy culture, the speakers talk in an evasive manner in order to divert the hearer's attention by referring to one's close relations through a third person form. We can see that the reference of deictic expressions might seem vague, but the hearer locates them by paying attention to the entities in context and by trying to understand who the speaker intends to refer to. Another way of pointing out entities is by reference to their location with respect to the deictic center, that is, the speaker's location at the time of utterance. Place deixis, also called spatial or locational deixis, occurs in language in forms of adverbs of place here and there, and demonstratives this, these, that, and those. They encode spatial discrimination in terms of proximity, that is closeness, and distance from the speaker, such as that, this, these, and here signify closeness, and that, those, and there signify distance from the speaker. For example, if the speaker says this box, he or she holds the box or it is placed close to him or her. And if she says, or if he says that box, the box is placed away from him or her. Some languages such as Japanese have two lexical equivalents of that. The first to signify place away from the speaker and near the addressee, and second to signify place away from both the speaker and the addressee. This is what Yule tells us. Children start using place deictics such as this at the initial stages of language acquisition only for ostensive definition, that is, for directing the addressee's attention to persons and objects in the immediate context. It is only later that they start using place deictics to signify distance. You will note that in the early stages of language acquisition, child uses this and here for objects that can be seen in the immediate context, and that and there for those that no longer can be seen in the immediate context. Sometimes the choice of this and that signals the speaker's emotional proximity or distance to what he or she is saying. Lyons considers such use of the demonstratives this and that as encoding empathetic deixis. For example, the utterance, "Does she still wear that dress?" suggests the speaker's dislike for the dress. That refers to a place distant from the speaker's deictic center, and therefore metaphorically it signifies the speaker's emotional distance to the entity referred to. There are lexical items such as here and there, adverbs of place, which point to places in the context, such as "I live here," "I'm going there." Levinson tells us that sometimes anaphora and deixis are so closely related that it's difficult to separate them. For example, in the utterance, "I've been living in San Francisco for 5 years and love it here." Here is both anaphoric and deictic. We will discuss non-deictic use of adverbs of place later. Next, prepositions such as up, down, above, below, left, right, behind, in front of can also function deictically, as they can specify position of entities with reference to the speaker's position, that is the deictic center. Take for example the following utterance: "Bob is the man to the left of Mark." This utterance is deictic if the statement is true from the speaker's point of view, as it is the speaker who is at the deictic center. This means that Bob is to the left of Mark from the speaker's point of view and not from Mark's point of view. Motion verbs such as come, go, bring and take also have a deictic sense, as they signify movement away from the speaker, that is go, take, or towards him or her, that is come, bring. Therefore, these verbs too are placed deictics, as their meaning is understood keeping in mind the position of the speaker in space. This means that if the speaker is away from the addressee, he or she can use the words come and bring in collocation with here to signify the addressee's movement towards the speaker. However, if the speaker is close to the addressee, he or she can use the words go and take in collocation with there to signify the addressee's movement away from the speaker. The speaker can use the expression come to the party to signal the hearer to reach a particular party venue, even if they both are not present there at the time of utterance. The utterance of such a statement is possible if the speaker psychologically shifts his point of view or deictic center to the party venue. By doing so, the speaker would psychologically position himself at the venue and correctly use the verb come instead of go. Let's talk about time deictics now. Time deictics can be used to refer to current time, time before the moment of utterance, and time after the moment of utterance. Time deixis occurs in language to form adverbs which signify time, such as now, then, today, tomorrow, yesterday, this month, next week, last year, etc. The knowledge of the time of utterance is important in the interpretation of each of these deictics. For example, Levinson says if you find a notice reading "I'll be back in an hour" on someone's office door, it is difficult to know when the writer would return unless you know when the person left or when the notice was pasted. Similarly, you cannot know which day today, tomorrow, or yesterday stand for unless you know when they were uttered. Interestingly, Hindi has the same word kal to denote both today and tomorrow, and it is from verb tense used in the co-text that we understand its referent. The adverbials today, tomorrow, or yesterday divide the day into diurnal spans and can refer to a specific time, as in 18, a time period within a day, as in 19, or to a day in general, as in 20. These examples have been taken from O'Keefe, Clancy and Adolph's 2011. 18. Did you go for the movie yesterday? 19. We've done enough work today. We'll do the rest of it later. 20. How was the weather yesterday? The non-deictics week, month and year, which refer to constant time periods, become deictic when combined with words such as this or last. However, last week, this month and last year may refer to calendrical or non-calendrical week, month and year, depending on the contextual knowledge of the interlocutors. The deictic this year can be used to refer to different time periods depending on who uses it and for what purpose we use it. Therefore, we can have the following three uses of this year referring to three different time periods. 21. January was the coldest month of this year. That is, period from January to December. 22. I will opt for stylistics this year, used by a student to refer to the academic year which may extend from August to April. 23. The government has allotted a huge sum of national security in the budget this year. This refers to the financial year which starts from April and ends in March. Verbs signifying tense and time also have a deictic element, as they can be used to refer to time in the past, present or future, and require the knowledge of the utterance time for their interpretation. For example, if a sentence reads, I live in the US, it refers to the present time. However, there would be problems if the reader does not know when the sentence was written. The spatial deictic here can function as a temporal deictic. Here can sometimes be used as a time adverbial to mean now. For example, in a teacher's utterance, I will stop here for today and we'll continue our discussion in the next class. Just as we can think of movement on the spatial axis, we can also metaphorically think of movement on the time axis, wherein the speaker conceives of his lecture as a journey, as in the above example, and therefore uses the spatial deictic here to refer to a point in time. The study of the phenomenon of deixis is an indispensable part of language study, as conversation would be impossible and unintelligible without the use of deictic items. Therefore, it is evident why deictics are among the first words acquired by children. In this module, we learnt how the phenomenon of deixis is exhibited in language and the various kinds of contextual information that deictic words in language point to. The next module on deixis would discuss that deictics encode referential information about people involved in conversation, the social relations between them, and the time and place of conversation. We will also learn about how the phenomenon of deixis is exhibited in discourse, following which we will focus on the symbolic and gestural deictics and the non-deictic usage of deictic terms from having learnt the various forms of deixis. Thank you.